This article outlines deepening political, humanitarian, and economical crisis facing Venezuela.
We will further explain when did its oil empire, being petrostate, boomed and eventually burst into hyperinflated catastrophe.
I am Marjorie Pauline Patam,
I'm Bobzorex Lopez,
and this is FS Notes. Venezuela is home to the largest proven oil reserves in the world. But in recent years, widespread mismanagement of its oil wealth caused a sharp decline in its petroleum production and exports, deeply damaging the country's economy as Venezuela descended into political turmoil. We also argue that both government and opposition must take responsibility for the present crisis, as both have failed to offer coherent policy responses to the problems facing Venezuela. The government has failed to address the crisis with enough consistency and seems more concerned with the maintaining power.
While the opposition MUD continues to offer the removal of the government as its sole solution to the crisis, yet its policy proposals are poorly developed and do not offer long-term solutions to the country's problems. Venezuela seeks for alliances, the strategic interplays of US and Russia from different countries to back them up in engaging these internal affairs.
With all details here pointed out, the scope of this study will only be concerning about the political economy of Venezuela and the adversaries of power struggle amidst President Maduro's control.
A lack of macroeconomic transparency on the part of the government of President Nicolas Maduro has made it difficult accurately to gauge the extent of the country's despairs.
Many economists and energy experts fault Maduro's policies and those of his predecessor, the late President Hugo Chavez, for destroying the economy. One thing that is not in dispute is the pivotal role of oil has played. On the latter, this study will provide a descriptive account and analysis of Venezuela's adversaries as key determinants to expand President Maduro's power over his country struggling for peace.
This study looks at each of certain issues when and where did the Venezuela crisis start, which led to grave power struggle.
Venezuela, home to the world's largest oil reserves, is a case study in the perils of petrostatehood. Since its discovery in the 1920s, oil has taken Venezuela on an exhilarating but dangerous boom and bust ride that offers lessons for other resource-rich states. Decades of poor governance have driven what was once one of the Latin America's most prosperous countries to the economic and political ruin.
Petrostate is an informal term used to describe a country with several interrelated attributes. Number 1, government income is deeply reliant on the export of oil and natural gas. Number 2, economic and political power are highly concentrated in an elite minority. There are quite a lot of countries that are often described as petrostates. Venezuela is one of these countries.
These are the men who were locked in the Venezuelan power struggle. In short terms, Chavez is the Bolivarian leader, Maduro is the tyrant ruler, and Guaido is the recognized interim president. This struggle is playing out as concerns the future of the armed forces. Guaido is trying to get the military on his side, while Maduro tries to keep it behind him.
When the inflation and shortages led to mass protests against his government, the violent crackdown he unleashed in response led the US to impose sanctions in 2014, targeting individuals accused of human rights violation. Maduro insists shortages plaguing the country are caused by Washington's punitive sections, and he has vowed to stop the spectacle of fake humanitarian aid.
More than 50 countries recognize Guaido as Venezuela's rightful president. But Maduro enjoys strong support from Russia, which is eager to challenge US interventionism, as well as China, which is concerned over the fate of billions of dollars Beijing has to lend to Caracas. Maduro's forces would turn Russian aid into a political weapon by providing it only to supporters being in favor of giving humanitarian assistance to Venezuela. we are not in favor of giving it to its corrupt regime.
Just a few years after Hugo Chavez took office in 1999, he fired thousands of employees at the state-run oil company called Petrostate de Venezuela. After a controversial strike that essentially rid the companies of its expert in oil production and replaced them with people who were loyal to him. In the mid-2000s, when oil prices were high, Chavez pumped the country's oil revenue into social welfare programs, including setting domestic gasoline prices so low that the consumption soared. The plan was unsustainable. When the oil prices tumbled from more than $100 a barrel in 2014 to less than $30 at the beginning of 2016, the country's economic woes deepened.
Inflation in Venezuela has gone hand in hand with regular people's inability to purchase basic goods. As prices soared, food and medicine became out of reach for many Venezuelans, who felt they had no option but to flee. Last year, Maduro implemented a new plan to erase 5 zeros off the country's currency, his attempt to confront the rising inflation problem.
The government actions have done little to alleviate and much to aggravate the current severe socio-economic crisis affecting Venezuela. Neither the government nor the opposition seems to offer concrete proposals to resolve the country's main underlying problem of continued oil dependency. Who must share the blame for the contemporary state of affairs in Venezuela because they only desire for power?
This political tactics of being a fraudulent aid for Russia and US, which does not focus on the well-being of the Venezuelan people. The alternative, however, is a context of continuing confrontation and polarization, with unknown outcomes for the peace and stability of the country and the region. Thank you for watching our video!
We hope you learned something today. Like, comment, subscribe. Again, I am Bobzorex Lopez.
Again, this is Marjorie Pauline Patam, and this is
And this is
FS Knows.